The wind tugged at the old ropes tied to the wooden pilings of the dock. Hank and Fletch were checking their gear, preparing to head out to sea. Two weathered fishermen who had worked together for over 10 years. They didn't expect this day to be any different from hundreds of others. That morning, the docks were filled with the usual sounds: the creaking of boats, the cries of seagulls, the chatter of fishermen. The weather forecast was good. With moderate winds and slight waves, nothing foretold any unusual events. For the third week in a row, the catch had been meager. Fish seemed to have disappeared from their usual spots. Many fishermen returned with empty nets, including Hank and Fletch. The bank loan for the boat weighed heavily on their shoulders, and the engine repair bills kept growing. They needed a good catch, otherwise they'd have to sell their equipment and look for other work. Suddenly, the murmur of conversations was drowned out by the loud sound of boat horns. Two boats from a competing fishing company entered the harbor, their decks piled high with crates of fresh fish. When they docked nearby, a stocky sailor with a feverish gleam in his eyes jumped off one of them. He spoke of a strange phenomenon: unusually warm water over a shoal at specific coordinates, where fish practically jumped into the boat. The fishermen exchanged skeptical glances until the sailor showed them his catch. The crates were teeming with more fish than others caught in a week. Hank and Fletch quickly assessed the situation. Given their dire financial state, it would be foolish not to check out this spot. Half an hour later, their boat was heading toward the specified coordinates. The five-man crew worked in unison: Hank, Fletch, Wade, Brock, and Reed, a young intern who had joined just a couple of months ago. The sun rose over the horizon, painting the sea's surface in golden hues. The boat confidently cut through the small waves, leaving a foamy trail behind. Seagulls, like sentinels, followed the vessel, anticipating an easy meal. Hank stood at the helm, watching the GPS sensor count down the distance to the coordinates. His weathered face, lined with wrinkles, showed concentration. Beside him, Fletch checked the nets. The quality of their preparation would determine the entire catch. "About 5 miles to go," Hank reported, consulting the instrument. Brock and Wade were inseparable comrades, both in their 40s, having spent nearly half their lives at sea. They prepared the gear, occasionally exchanging brief remarks. Reed, a young man of about 20, served as an assistant. His task was to do everything quickly and silently, without asking unnecessary questions. Soon, the crew noticed a strange change. The water's agitation suddenly ceased, a very unusual calm in the open sea. The air temperature rose by a couple of degrees, even though they had only sailed a few miles from shore. As the fishermen approached the spot, Fletch noticed unusual movement in the water. Thousands of small fish were leaping to the surface as if fleeing from something. The number of fish was impressive. It seemed they could be scooped up with a net without even deploying the larger ones. The crew immediately began casting the nets. The process had been honed over years. Wade and Brock operated the winch. Fletch monitored the proper deployment of the net, and Reed assisted wherever an extra pair of hands was needed. The first net was cast without incident. They were preparing to deploy the second from the opposite side, but suddenly Hank saw a large fin slicing through the water nearby. It was much larger than any surrounding fish and methodically circled their boat. Everyone froze, watching the unusual sea creature. The mysterious being submerged, but soon appeared on the other side of the boat. Hank reduced the engine's speed to get a better look at the uninvited guest. The creature methodically circled the boat, occasionally disappearing underwater for short periods. When it fully surfaced, the crew was stunned. It was longer than their boat, with a bluish-gray body, unlike any shark. "What the hell is that?" Brock muttered, grabbing the railing. The mysterious sea creature made another circle around the boat. then suddenly crossed the line of the already deployed net. Everything happened in a matter of seconds. The powerful body easily tore through the strong ropes, releasing the entire catch. To the crew's horror, the net was hopelessly damaged. Fletch cursed under his breath. A new net cost money they didn't have, but something about the creature's behavior seemed deliberate, almost intelligent. It hadn't just swum through the net, it had purposefully destroyed it. While the fishermen tried to retrieve the remnants of their equipment, the sea creature fully emerged from the water. Its massive body soared into the air and crashed back with a loud splash, creating a wave that dangerously tilted the boat. Toolboxes shifted, and something clattered across the deck. "Hold on!" Hank shouted, gripping the helm tighter. After that, the creature began to dart erratically, leaping out of the water dangerously close to the boat. Its movements were chaotic, yet it seemed desperately trying to draw attention. Surprisingly, the small fish also mimicked these movements, as if in panic. Reed was the first to voice the thought that had been forming in everyone's minds. Maybe it's trying to show us something. The others looked at him skeptically, but the young fisherman's words made sense. The strange sea creature had already exhibited unusual behavior by destroying the net and releasing the fish. Now it seemed to be doing everything possible to point the humans in a certain direction. After a brief discussion, the crew decided to follow the creature. After all, the fishing trip was already ruined, and curiosity was taking over. They could return to port empty-handed, but intuition suggested something unusual and very alarming was happening here. The sea, once clear blue, gradually took on a murky hue. The first rainbow-colored slicks appeared on the surface, becoming more pronounced as the boat advanced. "What's that smell?" Wade covered his nose with his jacket sleeve. Soon, the fisherman saw the source of the odor. The ocean's surface was covered with a dark, oily film, stretching almost to the horizon. At first, there were separate spots, then they merged into large patches until the entire visible water surface was coated with a black-brown film. "Looks like oil," Fletch stated. "Someone's dumping oil right into the sea." In the mist, the outlines of large ships were visible. The water around them shimmered with toxic slicks, confirming the fishermen's suspicions. Hank increased speed, approaching the source of the pollution, while maintaining a safe distance. Through binoculars, it was clear that the ships were anchored. They were cargo vessels, most likely tankers. From one of them, a hose extended to the sea's surface, from which an oily stream gushed directly into the water. What was happening left no doubt. They were deliberately dumping waste directly into the ocean. "Now it's clear why the fish are acting so strangely," Reed said. "They're fleeing from the pollution." And then everything fell into place. The warm water, the anomalous concentration of fish, the strange behavior of the mysterious creature, all explained by large-scale pollution. Toxic waste heated the water, forcing marine life to panic and seek cleaner areas. The crew exchanged glances. They had witnessed a terrible environmental crime. "These ships are probably dumping waste illegally," Brock suggested. "Otherwise, why do it so far from shore where no one can see?" "What are we supposed to do about it?" Wade asked. "We're just fishermen. It's not our business." "Of course it's our business," Hank retorted. "These bastards are destroying our livelihood. Without fish, we're out of work." It was decided to gather evidence. Each had a phone with a camera. That should be enough to document the incident and later provide the information to the authorities. The next hour was spent methodically gathering video evidence as they moved around the dumping site, careful to keep a safe distance from the pollution sources. The fishermen captured wide shots of the ships, close-ups of the name and registration number on one of the tankers, documented the waste discharge process and the extent of the contamination. They also collected some polluted water in empty bottles for potential analysis. All the while, the mysterious creature circled nearby, as if observing their actions. It would appear on one side, then the other, sometimes disappearing underwater for extended periods, only to re-emerge into view. When they had gathered enough evidence, Hank nodded. "Time to go. We have everything we need." They hadn't even turned around when a piercing ship's siren echoed over the sea. One of the ships had spotted them. People appeared on the deck of the tanker, shouting and pointing in their direction. Soon, a small motorboat with 3 people on board detached from the side and headed straight for them. "Damn, they're coming after us," Brock shouted. Hank sharply turned the boat and pushed the engine to full throttle. The old motor roared laboriously. The boat leaped over a wave and sped toward the shore. The chase had begun. The pursuer's motorboat was smaller and faster. The distance between the vessels was rapidly decreasing. "They'll catch us," Fletch stated grimly, looking back. "They have a more powerful engine." At that moment, something unexpected happened. The familiar creature surfaced right in front of the pursuer's motorboat. It created such a wave that the small boat nearly capsized. The people on board shouted, waving their arms. One of them even fell overboard. This delay allowed the fishermen to widen the gap. Hank steered the boat in zigzags, maneuvering between the sparse reefs protruding from the water. The motorboat still tried to pursue them, but the 2 people on board were primarily occupied with rescuing their fallen comrade. Then another miracle occurred. The mysterious sea creature appeared again, this time striking the side of the motorboat with its tail. The impact was so strong that the boat tilted and began taking on water. The pursuers were forced to abandon the chase and save their sinking vessel. "Did you see that?" Reed exclaimed in awe. "It helped us." Hank didn't reduce speed until the shoreline was clearly visible. Only then did he allow everyone to catch their breath. "What was that creature?" Brock asked, still looking at the water behind the stern. No one knew the answer. They had seen something they couldn't name, a creature confidently slicing through the water, seeming like a biological anomaly. Too large for a dolphin, too agile for a whale, and with behavior suggesting an almost human intelligence. Организация Объединенных Наций, +2, reverso context, +2, reverso context. Upon returning to shore, the fishermen wasted no time. Hank sent the recorded material to several places at once: environmental agencies, news channels, and an old friend working in the Coast Guard. Fletch compiled a detailed report of the incident, including the tanker's coordinates and the observed details. The reaction was swift and widespread. The video showing oil slicks and illegal waste dumping caused a real scandal. Authorities immediately dispatched patrol boats to the specified coordinates. The commercial vessels were detained. Document checks and water sample analyses began. The tanker-owning company tried to deny involvement, but the evidence was irrefutable. It was established that the crews had been dumping used engine oil and other toxic waste to avoid the high costs of proper disposal at the port. After a thorough investigation, the ship owners were fined heavily. Criminal cases were initiated against the management. They were obliged to fund the cleanup of the water area. Their ships were banned from entering territorial waters, and the company was placed on an international blacklist of carriers. Reed compiled a detailed report on the encounter with the unknown sea creature and sent it to marine biologists. A few days later, a response came from a scientist at the Oceanographic Institute. The letter stated that the creature likely belonged to a rare species of deep-sea whales, previously considered nearly extinct. In the past 40 years, there had been only 2 confirmed sightings of this marine giant. Usually, these whales avoided humans and stayed at great depths, but this whale, for unknown reasons, had broken its habits. The behavior you described, especially the deliberate destruction of the net and assistance during the escape from pursuers, indicates an exceptional level of intelligence, the biologist wrote. Although we know that cetaceans are capable of complex cognitive processes, such deliberate intervention in human affairs is extremely unusual. The scientist requested permission to use the fisherman's video materials for research and proposed organizing an expedition to the observation site in hopes of seeing the unique marine animal again. Naturally, the fisherman agreed. The story of the pollution and the mysterious whale quickly spread through the coastal towns. Journalists besieged Hank and his team, demanding interviews. For a few days, they became local celebrities, but fame quickly faded, as it usually does, giving way to new events. Authorities banned navigation in the area of the discovered pollution. Large-scale cleanup operations began. Ecologists monitored fish migration and the state of marine flora and fauna. Gradually, nature began to recover. The scientific expedition that set out to search for the rare whale returned empty-handed. Despite using the most modern equipment, the animal could not be found. It likely returned to the ocean depths from where it had emerged. Over time, the fishermen's lives returned to normal. The catch improved, especially after the pollution was eliminated. Hank was finally able to pay off the loan for the boat. Fletch bought new nets to replace the torn ones. Reed decided to enroll in college for marine biology, inspired by the encounter with the unusual creature. Sometimes, the fishermen would go out to the same spot where they first saw the whale, hoping for another encounter. But the miracle did not repeat. The mysterious deep-sea inhabitant did not appear again. "Do you think we'll see it again?" Reed once asked, standing next to Fletch on the pier. Fletch shook his head. "Unlikely. But somewhere out there, in the depths, it's still swimming. And maybe, right now, it's saving someone else." "You know, I often think, why did it choose us?" Reed continued. "Why did it show us what was happening? There were other fishermen." Fletch shrugged. "Who knows? Maybe we just happened to be in the right place at the right time." A year later, a sea in the former pollution zone finally began to recover. The water cleared, the fish returned. The fishermen could once again engage in their favorite activity. And the story of the encounter with the unusual whale remained just a tale told in coastal bars over a pint of beer. For Hank, Fletch, and the others, it was a day that changed their perspective on the ocean. They became more attentive to the water that provided their livelihood. Every time they went out to sea, they now paid attention to the state of the water, the behavior of the fish, and other marine inhabitants. And as they noticed something unusual, oil slicks or dead fish, they immediately reported it to the Environmental Service. One day, about 3 years after those events, Hank was fishing alone near the shore. The day was calm, the catch was good. Returning to port at sunset, he saw a splash in the distance. A large body briefly appeared above the water and disappeared again. It could have been a regular orca or another whale, or maybe their old acquaintance was just checking if everything was okay with his sea. Hank smiled and saluted in the direction of the splash. He didn't tell anyone.